We've given away $5 million over the last 5 years. And yes, every year it gets increasingly difficult to affirmatively reward.
No one expected the news to break like this. Not the fans, not the network, and certainly not Mike Rowe himself. Just 1 minute ago, authorities entered the home of the Dirty Jobs star after an anonymous tip, and what they found inside has already set off a wave of confusion and panic across social media. This wasn't a routine visit or a harmless misunderstanding. The discovery was so shocking that even people who've worked with Mike for years are refusing to comment. For a man known as the straight-talking defender of the American worker, the scene investigators walked into has left viewers questioning everything they thought they knew about him. Within minutes, cameras were blocked off. Statements were silenced, and insiders were instructed to stay quiet. But early leaks are already spreading, and they point to something far more serious than anyone expected. Mike Rowe has spent decades building a reputation as the honest, hard-working voice of real America, the guy who showed us the toughest jobs, stood up for everyday people and avoided Hollywood scandals. But now, the sudden lockdown of his property, the sealed-off evidence, and the unanswered questions are creating a media storm unlike anything in his career. Why did officials show up without warning? Who filed the report? And what was found inside his home that forced authorities to move so fast? Whatever the truth is, it's clear this is only the beginning. And the real story behind this discovery is about to unfold in a way no one saw coming. For someone like Mike Rowe, whose public life has always seemed straightforward and scandal-free, an unannounced visit from authorities was the last thing anyone expected. It began early in the morning, long before reporters or neighbors realized something unusual was unfolding. 2 unmarked vehicles pulled up outside Mike's home, followed by a third. This one carrying officials who weren't just there for a casual welfare check. They moved with purpose, speaking briefly to each other before approaching the front door. No cameras, no lights, no media. Just quiet urgency. At first, neighbors assumed it was routine. Mike has always kept a low profile, and the people around him were used to seeing production trucks, delivery vans, even the occasional fan trying to grab a selfie. But this was different. No equipment, no crew, no visitors. And when the officials knocked, they didn't wait for long. Within minutes, they were inside the house, and the door was shut firmly behind them. So what triggered the visit? Sources close to the situation say it began with an anonymous report. A single message that raised enough concern for officials to act immediately. It wasn't a rumor from a fan or a wild accusation from online speculation. It came through a channel serious enough for authorities to move without delay. That alone raised questions. Who had access to the kind of information that would justify this level of response? And why now, after all these years of Mike living a quietly public life? What makes this even more unsettling is the timing. Mike was in the middle of planning new projects, working on speaking tours, and staying active on social media. His recent posts showed nothing unusual, no signs of stress, no hints of conflict, no cryptic messages that suggested something was wrong. If there were issues behind the scenes, he hid them well. Inside the house, investigators spent far longer than expected. What was meant to look like a standard entry turned into a full examination of multiple rooms. Items were photographed, boxed, and carefully logged. The longer they stayed, the more obvious it became that this wasn't symbolic. They were collecting evidence. By the time they emerged, everything had changed. The front door was closed, the blinds shut, and anyone who tried to approach was turned away. Officials refused to answer questions, and suddenly the quiet street outside Mike's house looked like the center of a forming storm. Calls to Mike's team went unanswered. His spokesperson simply said there was nothing to report at this time, a statement that only added to the confusion. If there was truly nothing to report, then why the silence? Why the security? Why the sudden lockdown? The moment the first photo leaked online, showing investigators leaving with sealed containers, the speculation exploded. Fans demanded answers. Comment sections filled with shock, anger, and disbelief. How could the man who spent years promoting honor, effort, and transparency now be connected to something so secretive? But here's what makes this story unpredictable. Not a single official has revealed what was found. Not a single source has confirmed the nature of the investigation. and not one person from Mike's inner circle has come forward, not to defend him, not to deny the claims, not to calm the situation. Whether this is the start of a misunderstanding or the unraveling of something much bigger, no one knows yet. But one thing is certain. Whatever was discovered inside that house is serious enough that even Mike Rowe, a man who has never hesitated to speak publicly, has gone completely silent. The silence surrounding Mike Rowe's situation didn't stay silent for long. As soon as news of the investigation began to spread, different versions of the story started appearing online. Some claimed the authorities were looking for financial documents. Others insisted it had something to do with a personal dispute. A few even pushed the idea that this was all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. But none of those theories explained why officials walked out of the house carrying sealed containers, folders, and equipment cases, the kind used only when there is something worth preserving as evidence. So the question quickly shifted from, was something found, to what was serious enough to take. The longer the mystery grew, the more aggressive the speculation became. People from Mike's past started receiving messages. Former co-workers, crew members, and even past Dirty Jobs guests were suddenly being asked whether they ever noticed anything unusual about him. Most didn't respond. The few who did said the same thing. Mike was always professional, always focused. Nothing strange ever happened around him. But even those comments didn't stop the rumors. They only made the situation more confusing. If Mike had nothing to hide, why was the truth being kept so tightly controlled? Meanwhile, Mike's fan base reacted in two completely different directions. One half defended him, arguing that he had always been a positive influence, a hard-working advocate for laborers, and the last person who would ever be involved in something illegal. The other half wasn't so sure. They pointed out how many trusted celebrities had fallen before. They brought up how often public figures portray one image to the world, while something entirely different happens behind closed doors. And most importantly, they questioned why someone as outspoken as Mike had suddenly disappeared from all communication. For years, Mike Rowe was known for talking directly to the public, through interviews, social media posts, live events, podcasts, and videos. He spoke about responsibility, integrity, hard work, and honesty. He never shied away from topics others avoided. Yet now, at the moment people expected him to speak most, there was nothing. No update, no explanation. Not even a single line saying he was aware of the situation. Insiders say his team was instructed not to release any statements until the situation is evaluated, a phrase that only adds fuel to the speculation. What situation? What needs evaluating? Who is controlling the information? Mike, his attorneys, or the authorities involved? The investigation wasn't just a moment inside his house. It had quiet consequences that moved far beyond it. Scheduled interviews were suddenly postponed. Promotional events were put on hold. Partners who'd worked with Mike for years were told to wait for further instruction. Nobody seemed to know whether to continue publicly supporting him or step back until more was known. And then came the biggest twist of all. The location of the evidence taken from Mike's home was sealed by request. Not just stored, sealed. That is something that normally happens only when the contents could affect public reaction, career stability, or legal outcomes. It confirmed one thing. Whatever was collected was not ordinary, not casual, and not something that would simply go away after a few news cycles. But people who know Mike personally insist there's more to the story. They say Mike has been dealing with something privately for months, something he never made public, something only a handful of people knew about. Whether that connects to the discovery inside his home is still unknown, but the timing is impossible to ignore. What began as a quiet investigation at a private property is now shifting into a full public storm, and the one person at the center of it still hasn't spoken. Until he does, the world is left with only three possibilities. As the investigation continued behind closed doors, a new wave of information began circulating. Not from officials, not from news outlets, but from people who claimed to have been inside Mike Rowe's home before the incident. A former friend, speaking anonymously, described the house as organized but unusually private, with certain rooms always kept closed off, even to guests. Another source mentioned that Mike rarely allowed anyone to enter without advance notice, and even then, access was limited. For most people, that wouldn't seem strange. Celebrities value privacy. But after the recent discovery, every small detail suddenly seemed like a clue. Then came a quiet but important revelation. The anonymous tip that triggered the investigation was not sent by a stranger or a random online critic. It came from someone who had direct knowledge of the home. Someone who had been inside. That single detail changed everything. It meant the discovery wasn't based on suspicion. It was based on information, and that meant whoever reported it believed there was something inside worth exposing. Meanwhile, media outlets and YouTube channels began building their own narratives. Some accused the authorities of overreacting. Others suggested a scandal was being covered up. A few even implied that Mike himself might be the target of a setup, that someone wanted to ruin his career by planting or twisting evidence. With no official statement from Mike or his legal team, every theory spread unchecked, and the silence only fueled more headlines. But there was something else happening quietly behind the scenes, something far more telling than internet speculation. Several of Mike's longtime business partners, sponsors, and collaborators suddenly edited or removed content featuring him. Not publicly, not with announcements, but quietly. Brand pages were updated. Promotional banners disappeared. One upcoming project was paused indefinitely. That kind of reaction doesn't happen unless executives believe something serious is involved, or unless lawyers have advised them to prepare for the worst. And yet, there was still no confirmation about what was actually found in the house. No charges, no statements, no leaked documents, just silence and movement. The type of movement that happens only when people behind the scenes are preparing for impact. Then came the first undeniable shift. Mike's official website and social accounts went inactive. Not deleted, just frozen. No new posts, no replies, no comments, nothing. Fans began asking the same question everywhere. Where is Mike Rowe? Some started defending him even harder, convinced this was a misunderstanding. Others argued that if Mike were innocent, he would have spoken immediately. But those who have worked in the entertainment industry know something important. Silence usually means lawyers are involved, and lawyers don't allow statements until every word is calculated. So now the situation has separated into two opposing realities. In one reality, Mike Rowe is being unfairly dragged into an investigation based on false claims, and the truth will eventually clear him. In the other reality, something was found inside that house that cannot be explained away easily. Something that will come out eventually, whether Mike speaks or not. And then there is the third possibility, the one nobody is prepared for, that the truth is not simple. That what was found might not make Mike a villain, but it might reveal a side of his life the public was never meant to see. A personal struggle, a hidden battle, a private issue that grew too large to stay hidden. Whether it's a scandal, a misunderstanding, or something much more complicated, one thing is now guaranteed. Mike Rowe will not be able to stay silent forever. The world is waiting. His career is on hold, and the evidence that was taken from his home is not going to stay sealed forever. As the days passed with no answers, one thing became clear. The story was no longer just about what was found in Mike Rowe's house. It had evolved into something much bigger, a test of public trust, media pressure, and the fragile line between a public image and a private life. People who spent years admiring Mike for his honesty and work ethic were now forced into a strange position: defend him without proof of innocence, or doubt him without evidence of guilt. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, lawyers, investigators, and public relations teams were preparing for the inevitable moment when the truth would no longer be containable. Sources close to the situation confirmed that the evidence taken from Mike's home was now undergoing a deeper review, not just to confirm what it is, but whether it connects to something larger. That meant the situation was no longer just about what was found, but about what it might lead to next. Interviews could follow. Subpoenas could be issued. And if anything remotely criminal is confirmed, the case won't stay quiet much longer. But there's another side to this that most people aren't talking about: the personal cost. Mike Rowe has lived his entire career on the idea that work matters, character matters, and authenticity matters. His entire brand was built on trust, not fame, not controversy. To see that same trust now under attack is perhaps the biggest blow of all. Whether innocent or not, the damage to his reputation is already happening in real time. Friends have gone silent. Brands are stepping back. Networks are watching closely. And fans who once saw him as one of the good ones are now stuck in the kind of doubt that never fully disappears. Yet in the middle of all this, one question remains unanswered. Why hasn't Mike spoken? Not a video, not a post, not even a short written denial or clarification. People are used to celebrities disappearing after scandals, but Mike was never that kind of celebrity. He was always direct, always unfiltered, always engaged. So the silence says something. Whether it says I'm guilty, I'm being advised, or I'm still processing what just happened, no one knows yet. But it means something. There are rumors. Some claiming that Mike is preparing a full public statement, others suggesting he has stepped away completely until the investigation is over. A few believe the silence is strategic. The longer he waits, the more the public will be desperate to hear from him, and the more powerful his eventual response will be. But that only works if the truth is on his side. If it isn't, silence is not strategy. It's survival. What happens next will decide everything. If the evidence turns out to be nothing more than a misunderstanding, Mike's career may recover, but not without scars. If the discovery leads to legal action or public exposure, then everything he built, from dirty jobs to his foundation to his trusted public voice, will change forever. And if the truth falls somewhere in the middle, the public may never look at him the same way again, even if no crime was committed.